All right, so this is going to be our second video guide to some of the forest preserves of Chicago and the surrounding areas. And I slowed this down a little bit compared to the first one that I posted, but I suspect it's still going to be a little too fast for folks. So we'll work on that in these future ones as well. So this is St. James Farm. This video is going to actually show us St. James Farm and then 3 of the adjacent forest preserves. We had only ever been to St. James Farm and Blackwell, which is what we're going to be headed to. And then in this one, we're going to be exploring Herrick Lake and Danada. So St. James Farm is a really nice and easy forest preserve to explore. You can see the limestone paths here really big. It's very easy to keep physical distancing since we're in the time of COVID, but it's also really nice and relatively soft if you're on a bike, soft if you want to walk or run as well. I'll say a little bit more when we kind of come back through it, but it's a really kind of neat place to explore because there's a lot of different ecosystems in a pretty small amount of space. There's a working riding area there. It was originally a horse farm for a wealthy family up until I think the 70s or 80s. So there's even a horse and hound cemetery. It's just really lovely. Where we are now, though, we've actually at this point gone north out of St. James Farm and crossed Mack Road. And St. James is in Warrenville. So all this is in the pretty far western suburbs in DuPage County. This is Blackwell Forest Preserve. And we have a long and sort of storied history with Blackwell because we've tried several times to go through there to use it as a way to get in and out of places. And there's a lot of construction going on. It's very easy to find this from St. James Farm. You're literally just going to be going up and out the north end of St. James Farm. And St. James Farm itself is quite easy to find. You can, of course, just Google it. But if you're on the prairie path riding along already, it's a nice little sort of diversion from that. So here we're going through Blackwell. Blackwell is really, like I said, one of our favorite forest preserves, because there's so many different kinds of ecosystems and a lot of different activities there. But there's also a lot of construction. So leave yourself a lot of time if you're going there. You can see that we're checking the map, but I don't think that the map really actively reflects all of the construction. I was thrilled here, by the way, because this was me that did not initiate our potty stop for once. And it was really nice to see that, in fact, there were real restrooms that were open. I mean, of course, they're pit toilets, but it was really nice to have that piece of normalcy kind of back. So I'm not going to try to detail all the different routes that we took through here because, honestly, it may have changed by the time, we did this in late July. If you're going in the middle of August, it may be that some different routes are open. I said no idea what was happening here with this stop. I think we were just adjusting some things. But just check the maps, but also, don't get too upset if you need to double back a little bit because they're doing some really extensive construction here, including doing something that appears to be rerouting the entire main creek that runs through there, which I believe is Spring Creek. It's a really big forest preserve. It's over 1,300 acres. It's also in Warrenville. It's one of DuPage County's most popular ones. And yes, we were going through a whole little back area there, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure if we were supposed to be there. So we had tried to get to McKee Marsh last summer and ended up having to ride on the roads to get there. And we were hoping that we could do that by going through the forest preserve this time, but it's essentially kind of impassable because you need to go over a bridge to go over this, the main waterway that's there, and it's just not up right now. But as you can see, there's a lot of room for different activities. They actually have like archery and fishing and a lot of other lessons and things that you can take there. Although, again, I'm not sure how those have been affected by COVID. But, we were just riding through for the heck of it, and it was really, really worthwhile. And we saw a ton of waterfowl and a lot of squirrels and just really, really good birding. So here we're crossing back over Mack Road, I believe. We're basically going to head back down through St. James Farm because these other 2 things that we're going to go to, Blackwell was, of course, north of St. James Farm, and the other 2 places that we're going are going to be to the east and a little bit south kind of St. James Farm, which is Herrick Lake and Danada. So there's this big long straightaway here. I originally kind of described it as going by St. James Farm, but you're actually going through it because St. James Farm is actually kind of on either side of Butterfield at this point. So this big long straightaway is Butterfield. And once you cross over what I believe is Herrick Road, you're in Herrick Lake. Actually, it is Herrick Road. You're in Herrick Lake. And we had never been to this, and we were really just smitten by both Herrick Lake and Danada. So I'm going to just describe a little bit about how they're different so that when you get to Danada, you'll really kind of notice it. So Herrick Lake it kind of is a big figure 8 that goes down south of Butterfield Road, almost to Warrenville Road. And if you ride through that figure 8, you're going to get to Danada without really ever leaving that bike path. So Herrick Lake is really nice and woodsy. It was a little sunny that day, and so it was nice for us to be out of the sun a bit. And you're going to see that Danada feels very different. So Danada is actually named for Dan and Ada, which are the first names of the two people that owned the huge farm and equestrian center that it used to be. They actually raised thoroughbreds that won all kinds of big prizes. And it's going to feel much more open, a little bit more manicured. You'll really see all of the vestiges of that equestrian past, but also the equestrian present, because it's still an equestrian center, even though it's in public versus private hands now. So there's a lot of historical structures, but also a lot of pieces of working farm as well. Some pieces of it are not, of course, open again because of COVID, but it still feels really different from Herrick Lake. So in Herrick Lake, we were here deciding sort of which way we wanted to do this figure 8. All of the trails have really lovely bird names. We decided to basically do the longer side of the figure 8 and then have a shortcut when we were coming back. And we thought that made the most sense, so that then we had a slightly easier ride once we were maybe a little bit tired, or because this entire ride was over 3 hours. So you'll see how that figure 8 looks if you look at a map there. This is what we were consulting here. We ended up, even though we didn't see any of the eponymous birds, ended up again taking that longer part of the figure 8 to get to Danada. Even though we didn't see herons or bluebirds, we have seen bluebirds at St. James Farm before, so they're really lovely, and really a lovely spring migrant. And St. James Farm is just such a beautiful and bucolic place that we really enjoyed seeing those there. So here we're still going through Herrick Lake, and again, you'll see that even though it's pretty wooded, this is more of an open savanna area, so you see a lot of really neat unusual sparrows. We saw some chipping sparrows and some song sparrows and meadowlark and some other neat summer birds. And you can tell that you're approaching Danada, just like I say here, you start seeing a lot of horse poop on the road. And it really does kind of look like little cairns, little traditional stone markers. So what you're going to first see here, the first real piece of Danada that we saw was this, which was this entry gate to a racing oval that the young thoroughbreds used to get trained on. And we decided we would sort of set this up as though it were a movie that from the point of view of a horse. And I was supposed to be out ahead, and then Lou was going to almost beat me, and then I was going to get ahead. But you'll see here, that plan just completely fell apart. He just went ahead and just completely blew me out of the water. So the horse whose point of view this was taken from was completely not the one that won. So I was a little miffed about that, but not really. It was hard riding on that grass, actually. And then we were a little bit tired out here, so we actually stopped and relaxed for quite a bit on this picnic table here. So at that point, we thought we were kind of at the end of our ride, and then we sort of realized as we were sitting here that in reality, we had not actually looked at a map to see where the end of the trail at Danada was. So we checked it out, and we were both pretty tuckered out. And it turned out we had another 3 miles to go before we could turn around. So in reality, it was pretty cool because, as you're going to see, we ride through all of the working parts of the farm and a lot of the historic buildings. There's a ton of signage to read. So if you're interested in horses or how farms used to function in the past, it's a really, really good ride and lots of stuff to stop and look at. It would be really worth walking through as well as riding through. And you'll see we'll go past some of that old equipment again when we come back going the return path. It was pretty hilly over here, which is nice because you got some really, really nice views. It's a little hard to see the way that this was filmed, but it was really beautiful. The only thing is that there's all this bucolic beauty, and then if you look off to the side, there's a few areas where you think that you would see all of this nature, but there's actually a lot of sprawling subdivisions. So the very, very end of the trail, going to that 0.0 marker, and we really like those 0.0 markers, but in fact, we saw that it was all downhill to get to it, which meant that we were going to have to ride all the way uphill to get back. So we decided that last hill with a beautiful view was probably good enough. So we rode back through the hilliness, and we're going to come up pretty soon here on that working part of the farm. And so you'll be able to see on the left these really cool conveyor belts taking hay up into the barns, because they do have horses that are still stabled there. And they normally have a ton of equestrian programming and all kinds of classes that you can take if you don't have your own horse. So it's a really great resource to check out, and some beautiful facilities. That was one of the conveyor belts that we just passed on the left. And then we're going to go back through this tunnel and past the oval where the thoroughbreds used to train. That was it right there. And then this will be going back through Herrick Lake here. So this is not going to go quite all the way to the end of our ride, but you'll see we get through this kind of shorter path through Herrick Lake. So again, you can do an out and back and not have to repeat yourself if you just take this figure 8 that is pretty clearly indicated on the maps there. So this is into Herrick Lake now from Danada, and you'll see it starts to get a little bit more wooded. And again, really beautiful. And it wasn't so wooded that there were tons of mosquitoes, but it was wooded enough that, if this were earlier in the day, it would be really nice to be out of the sun, especially because it was pretty hot there at the end of July. A lot of different little ecosystems here. So you got some good woodpecker action in some of these woods, which we really enjoyed. And you'll see that there's going to be kind of coming out from here in a few minutes, that long straightaway that goes back through St. James Farm. And I really recommend that. It's not going to look super interesting on this ride, but I want to recommend it because St. James Farm does still have things growing on it. It's really an interesting piece of not too recent or not too distant history, and a lot of great signage, so you can really see what this area looked like 50 years ago and get a really good view of how much it's changed. So highly recommend all these forest preserves. Thank you so much for joining us on this ride.